Kees is getting ready to roll.
I'll be there because you had me.
Steering wheel doesn't adjust, man.
Tell you.
No, it doesn't. Sorry. Super old school.
Have to start braking well before, otherwise it's too heavy. It throws me around. Pretty good time. about 8,400 RPM.
Yeah, it's because it's a stroker. It doesn't like to rev
Doesn't
after.
like the RPM. So its power band is really between about 48. Really, you want to try and keep it over 5. Between 5 and 7 is where it's happiest. It wants to pull, it wants to torque, so it's good there. And it's actually pretty cool, the shifting gates. As you shift, it keeps the power up. It doesn't, normal street car, how it kind of dies out. Yeah, it actually keeps pulling. Yeah. So it's pretty cool that way. And then the only thing that I'm working with now is the brakes. Trying to get the thing slowed down a little bit more, especially turn. Yeah, we got to play with that a little bit. Obviously, turn 3 here. You kind of. I did manage to get it into 4th gear at the top of the hill, but then under braking, it kind of drops to the right, and so you're unbalanced as it is. So you got
The
to.
motor sounds nice. It's got
Yeah.
The exhaust is exceptional too.
And it's the way the track here is at Vancouver Island Motorsports Circuit. It's very much a 3rd gear torque or 2nd gear high RPM, and so you got to find where is your good time to make the car work.
Right.
Okay, so far so good. Yeah.
So just give me
A rundown of the track.
tell me a little bit about. I mean, you've driven so many different cars. So the question is, how does it feel driving a front-wheel drive car on a track like this?
Well, it's in the steering, right? You can just feel the steering. Obviously, going to a front-wheel drive car, I'm used to very much the rear-wheel drive cars and having the steering and setting it up. So in this case, obviously, the first couple of laps, I got to get used to how heavy the steering can be and how you really got to be controlling, because you're controlling with your right foot as well. So between the steering and the brakes, there's a lot of work going on the front wheels, and you can feel that in the steering wheel. So I kind of got used to that, and then it's all about smoothness at that point. So I'm glad that you fixed the heel and toe ability
the pedal
in the car, so that I could actually, make it downshift nice and smooth, do proper heel and toe in it, and work it that way. The next thing, of course, with the front wheel drive is that the back gets a little light when you're under heavy braking. And so, again, I'm kind of used to having all the weight in the back. With what I normally drive, now I got everything in the front. And so it tends to get a little light in the back. But I managed to kind of use that going into the corners a little bit to set the car up and just kind of get on the power a little bit earlier. So it's certainly got its advantages to doing that.
Any comment about how the car's set up relative to what you think it should be set up? Like,
So,
I haven't put a lot of time into the car in terms of the track and getting it dialed.
So we got to try and work on where it's easier to slow the car down, more stable under slowing down. So I got to work with the brake bias and just maybe in the setup, try and get the thing slowed down. It turns in fine, and then trying to get the power down.
Yeah.
The engine has got a lot of torque, so as you get on the power reasonably early, it tends to want to spin the inside wheel already. So it's all about being able to go in perhaps a little bit faster, and then a little smoother mid-turn, and then being able to get on the power when the thing straightens up. So there's some suspension setups, but it doesn't have a major oversteer or understeer problem as such.
Because I thought it was more like after I changed the stiffers.
Okay. It wants to snap a little bit, but I think that is the weight bias difference in the car anyway. So having 65, 66% in the front probably.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And like a little over 30% on the back. So it is a different driving style. But it doesn't do anything strange. It's actually, quite manageable, and I think it's a matter of fine-tuning at this point to get the car to go. I can pick 2 or 3 spots where it can pick up quite a bit, and then from there we're kind of stuck with the gearing, how the gearing is in the car. So I understand you have a nitrous bottle hidden away someplace, so there might be some time in that sooner or later as well when that starts working properly.
Okay, we're back in pit lane here. So, Kees, tell me about background.
All right, so my background. So let's start right from scratch. My name is Kees Nierop. I actually came from Holland when I was 16. My family, my dad moved us to Canada. We moved straight to Kelowna, and so I landed there September 5th, 1974. And then my racing really started right away because in Kelowna, British Columbia, we have a Knox Mountain hill climb, which in order to run the hill climb, you needed a racing license. So I went to Westwood in Coquitlam to get an actual driver's racing license, and so that I could run the Knox Mountain hill climb. My very first hill climb, which is run during the long weekend in May, I managed to actually roll my car because I was a little too ambitious. So my dad wouldn't let me give up, so I just get back in the car and drive it up the hill anyways. 3 wheels or not, doesn't matter. So I carried on. 2 years later, with my own mechanicking on the car, I won the Canadian Championship in 1978 at Westwood, and then decided instead of doing the same championship twice to go professional, so I went to IMSA and started doing endurance racing, and so I ended up starting out mechanicking on a car for Daytona, for the 24 Hours of Daytona in January of 1979. That all kind of ended up in like a 3-hour Daytona instead of a 24-hour Daytona. But I learned that if you want to drive in endurance racing and you want to finish races, you got to drive a Porsche. So I kind of started selling myself to the Porsche teams, which worked out for me because then I got a ride in Portland to drive the very first 934 turbocharged Porsche and started beating some of the twin turbo Porsches. That led to more and more driving to the point where Bob Aiken, Dick Barber, Al Holbert, Porsche Cars North America got interested in me, and I ended up running for Porsche Cars North America and Al Holbert introducing the 961 to North America, which is the racing version of the 959. And so I drove it twice out of the 3 times that it raced. They actually put it in the museum, so now my name is in the Porsche Museum as well. I'm kind of a dinosaur. Of course, it didn't hurt me much that I also won the Sebring 12-hour race in Florida in 1983. I won the 1986 championship with the 944 in Canada as well. And then I did a Trans-Siberia rally with the Porsche Cayenne from Moscow, Russia to Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. So I did my last professional race in 2010 with the Porsche Cup car for the Steve Paquette Bullet Racing. And then since then, I've continued racing more on for fun, but we're doing coaching, running a 996 Cup car in the Northwest. So I've basically been involved in racing since 1976 and still currently very active in driving and racing and coaching and having fun with motorsport. I love it.
Fantastic.
Going over a couple of driving techniques here at Vancouver
yeah.
Island Motorsports Circuit. So as you can see, there's a lot of corners at Vancouver Island Motorsports Circuit. So my driving style, and it's only my opinion and my driving style, but I try to look for as many straightaways as I can possibly create. So in my days, it was all about finding a straight line to get your braking done, to turn the car, and then I had the power in the 935 Porsche to get it going again down the straight. So I can maximize my braking if I go into a corner as straight as possible. I then find the slowest part of the corner, but I straighten the car up as much as I can to get all the power down again, to get out of the corner with as much throttle as possible. So I basically have, I don't carry sometimes all the speed through the middle of the corner. I slow down more, but I speed up faster. So also, of course, in a straight line, in my opinion, there's less friction on the tires, on the steering tires, so therefore you will accelerate faster if you can go in a straighter line. There's actually, with all the schools that I do, there's some people that make fun of me because they know that I look for caseaways. A little 5-foot straightaway is fine with me, but I call it a caseaway. So if I can go between corners and get the car to straighten up for 5 feet and then go into the next corner, these are important issues when you're trying to look for speed. So sometimes, like for example, this last turn, I find it very important between 18, 19 to stay to the left and maybe slow up a bit and then get the car to turn and be able to get on the power early to come down pit straight. So whatever I can gain here will gain me all the way down the straightaway to turn, I believe it's be turn 2. So you take that all the way along, all the tight bits and pieces as well. Getting into driving the Golf around here with all its horsepower was quite a bit of fun actually, totally different from what I'm used to. However, with the front wheel drive, I found all the manual and the torque steer and all the power that comes to the steering wheel. The steering wheel was really talking to me as to what the car is doing. So my seat could feel what the back of the car is doing, but I was really working with the front of the car. And so with the driven wheels being in the front, my right foot, the gas pedal, would obviously control the feedback through the steering wheel. It turned in really good, actually, but again, that perhaps by being on the brakes and having the back of the car being so light, I could use the brakes as almost like a handling tool instead of just a slowing down tool. So the car was very manual, very much talking to me, and I had to listen to it, and it took me like 3 laps to smoothen myself out to start understanding what it was telling me and then working with it. So very impressive, very torquey. I think we can make a couple of gear changes, but other than that, I felt that the car was staying level. The suspension was working very good. The power was working very good. And it actually stayed reasonably stable under braking as well. I had a few moments where the front would lock up, so again, with a little adjustment there, we could get rid of that. A nice light little car like that with all that horsepower. It makes you work for the lap time, but it's a very satisfying feeling when you make it work. And the last 2 laps that I did, actually 3 laps I guess, they were within like a 10, so I kind of got comfortable understanding the car and working with it. So a very pleasurable and enjoyable couple of laps at Vancouver Island.
And the $64 question is compared, say, to the 718 Cayman S in terms of performance envelope. That's
compared to car to 718, I think the Volkswagen, I would use it a little bit more like my old driving style, my driving style, where I would come into a corner, turn it, and kind of come out of the corner again. I wouldn't carry quite as much speed through the middle of the turn with the Golf. I think the Cayman probably carries more mid-turn speed, but the Golf is more direct in coming in and being able to get out. So it's got the torque. I think that the torque in that little engine really worked for me, having the right gears, and it just feeling so much lighter. It certainly, you can feel right away that it's so much lighter. So performance-wise, I think I enjoyed the Golf with its torque, with its engine, with its sound, with its ability to do what I wanted it to do. And I go into a modern car today, more like the Cayman. We have some more electronics working away at the car. It's a totally different feel, a different era. This was much more, I guess, what I really enjoyed as well.
Thanks again. Awesome. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Derek, and I really appreciate the opportunity to drive your Golf here today at Vancouver Island Motorsports Circuit. It's a very enjoyable car. I can so much appreciate all the work and effort and engineering that's gone into the car, and I'm glad we got a decent lap time out of it as well. So something to shoot
high 125, low 126, somewhere in that range, depending on which clock you look at, right?
Yeah, we got 2 different clocks running, so I like the other clock better that said the high 25, but apparently the official one is a low 26.
On a hot day.
On a hot day, and we'll come back and maybe, I think once we do a few adjustments to the car and a little bit cooler weather, there's got to be another at least second and a half in the car. So I think we can get it into the 24s.
We'll just say no to the nitrous, though.
Yeah.
Who knows? All right. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.